Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. On tap today, a drummer who's been perfecting his craft for over 4 decades. He played with Nantucket, he played with PKM, and won international audiences with DAG. He also backed some Hall of Fame rock and rollers, including Sam Moore of Sam and Dave. Will you please welcome a talented drummer, Kenny Soule. Welcome, Ken.
Thanks, Rick. It's nice to be here.
I have something I wanted to share with you. I don't think you realize this, but you've all heard about that little portal of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Well,
yeah.
I'm going to prove that it exists with you as well. All right.
Oh, my God.
A few weeks ago, I interviewed Ivan Bodley, and he was talking about an album, and he said, and Kenny Soule played on drums, and I'm going, whoa, Kenny Soule from PKM? And he goes, yeah, Kenny Soule. I go, okay. Next, I'm chatting with a musician friend of mine, Kevin Simon, out of St. Louis. He's in a tribute band called A Ticket to the Beatles, and he tells me that you're his drum teacher.
Yes, I am.
So I'm convinced that any musician out there is 6 degrees off Kenny Soule.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's a smaller world than we think.
You know, it's amazing the number of lives that we've impacted and how small this world really is.
Absolutely.
It just floors. I'll share a story with you. Back in this is 1989. I am working for Armed Forces Radio and Television. I'm in Guam, all right, little tiny island of Guam, and I was playing a Richard Marx song, and I said from my hometown of Chicago, Illinois, and then a few seconds later the phone starts to ring. And they said, hey, Rick, you're from Chicago? Whereabouts? And I said, well, I'm from Northwest Indiana. He goes, whereabouts? I said, a little town called Hobart. What year did you graduate? Come to find out, I graduated with his sister. This is a guy that's on a boat, a boat that's going past the island. That's like 8,000 miles away from Chicagoland. Just amazing.
You can't make that up.
It's amazing, and especially being a musician, the number of lives that you touch. It's just amazing. Now, let's talk about your musical journey. You came from a musical family in Connecticut. You studied violin and piano, and then you saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then you decided you wanted to be a drummer, right?
Oh, man, as soon as I heard Ringo whapping that backbeat with the open hi-hats, and along with the girls screaming, and the loud guitars, I mean, that's it for me.
Well, your dad helped you out. He was a music professor at Central Connecticut State University and arranged for you to study percussion under a member of the Hartford Symphony Orchestra. Can you tell us a little bit more about your musical upbringings?
Yes. Well, first, the guy that he hooked me up with, his name was Telly Lesbines, and he recently passed away, but he was a wonderful orchestral percussionist. I think he ended up in the Milwaukee Symphony. But I would go to his house. My mom would take me to his house every Saturday, and we'd be down in the basement, and his kids would be going crazy upstairs. But it was wonderful. It was the really basic, the super basic things. And we also touched on the orchestral, the timpani and the marimbas and all that stuff. But mostly it was the meat and potatoes, the rudiments, and the just basic coordination. And I'll always be forever ever grateful to him.
Wonderful.
Luckily for me, also, besides studying with him, in the town I grew up in, New Britain, Connecticut, hard-hitting New Britain, Connecticut, the music situation in the public schools was really good. It was really good, and so. You mentioned I played violin at first. That's true. In the 3rd and 4th grade, I was in the orchestra. My elementary school had an orchestra. And it was, looking back, it was just, I don't know who does that now. Maybe some private schools do that. But I don't think there's probably very few.
There's no funding for that anymore, that's for sure. That's a shame. Yeah. That's an absolute shame. Now, my first exposure to you was when you were a drummer with Nantucket, the Southern rock band from North Carolina. And back in those days, in the early 70s and 80s, you opened for Kiss and Styx and Boston, Journey, the Doobie Brothers, Mother's Finest. What do you remember from the Nantucket days?
Oh man, it was a real band in the sense that we got together when we were just doing covers. That would have been 72, and already the band was pretty good. And but Tommy Red was already writing songs, and so he was the key to the whole later thing. But so we. So we worked the Carolina club circuit. They were already together, when I joined them. I think I was their third drummer. But by the time 77 rolled around, we signed to Epic Records because we had been doing all original stuff on that same circuit. We had morphed into an original band. Through all the cover songs to the wayside. And so we signed with Epic in 77 and went all the way out to Seattle to record the first album. The label wanted us to work with this producer that was out there. So we went all the way out there and were there for about 6 weeks, flew all our gear out there, and it was quite an experience. That was the first
strange.
First
it would be more economical for you to fly him out rather than vice versa.
I know. That's exactly right.
Don't worry. We've got this all covered. Yeah, this is all coming from the money that we fronted you. That's the way record companies
you'll be paying it back one way or another. But it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
We were all just in our early 20s, and it was great. We toured off that first album for over a year, and the next two albums were recorded in Florida, which was we could drive to that.
Yeah, that's a little easier. Now, in 1981, while member of Nantucket, you and bassist Pee Wee Watson decided to branch off. You found a great guitarist and singer by the name of Mike Gardner, and the stage was set for a band I truly loved, PKM, Pee Wee, Kenny, and Mike. And you guys were all over WQDR in Raleigh in the early 80s. What do you remember hearing It Don't Take Much blasting from your car stereo from the very first time?
Oh man, we were just through the roof. The thing about that is that I know you remember Daniel Brunty, and many of your listeners may remember him too. He was at QDR in Raleigh, and I think he was the music director or program director, but he had a lot of pull, and he was on in the afternoon, and so we had already recorded this demo as PKM. And we had this reel-to-reel tape in our hands, and we rang them up. And by the way, I got to say that Nantucket is who opened the door for PKM. And the people at the radio stations knew me and Pee Wee because of Nantucket. So hats off to them, But anyway, we walked up there. We said, "Can we come by?" And this was he was on the air in the afternoon, and he said, "Sure, come by. We'll give it a listen." And so he while he was on the air, he during some other song that was playing, he put it on the reel-to-reel and played about 10 seconds of it. He said, "Oh, this is good." And a minute later, he goes, "Here's a new band, PKM," and he rolled the song.
I wish we could do that today, but
he rolled the song, and so we were not expecting that, and so we're standing there, and the phones start lighting up. It all started happening instantaneously because of Daniel Brunty, and suddenly, the gigs that we were doing around town were like sold out.
I'll never forget. I think you were for like about 5 weeks the number one most requested song.
Something like that.
Yeah. It was every time every time we'd get a request, we'd have to play it because it was as hot as what was out at the time. And of course, being a local band, it was fun to say you're listening to Raleigh's very own PKM, and it don't take much. That was so nice. It was so nice to be able to say that.
Right, the band you never heard of, but now you have.
Yeah, now you have, absolutely. But of course, there was a tie-in with Nantucket, but I think this song stood on its own. It was just very, very phenomenal. Can you tell me about? This falls into a category that I call eargasms. These are the songs that you have to sit and listen until the song ends, even if you're late for an appointment. The song. Yeah. So we're gonna feature It Don't Take Much, but I'd like to find out the backstory on it.
Well, the backstory is that Mike Gardner had already written that song when he approached Pee Wee and I about forming the band. We knew him anyway because he was on the scene, the same circuit we are. He was in a different band called, he was in Wide Open, and then he was in High and Mighty. They're both great bands. Anyway, he already had this song in his back pocket, and he had written it in hopes that Rodney Crowell would cover it.
Oh, okay. Oh, someday, some way. Yeah.
Yeah. But Rodney passed on it, and so we said, hell, we'll just do it ourselves, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it don't take much to keep me happy. Here it is right now on the Someone You Should Know podcast, PKM.
Take much to keep
still love that song today. That is It Don't Take Much from Raleigh's own PKM. Great
if that
stuff.
Ain't rock and roll, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. Was it a warm bed, a hot woman, and a cold beer?
That's right.
Now, sadly, we lost Mike to Parkinson's a couple of years ago, but they did a real nice thing on YouTube. It was a fundraiser with Sidewinder. You played, Pee Wee played, and Mike sang. What do you remember from that night?
Oh, well, I got to tell you, there was a couple of those. Thankfully, there was, because he had been sick for a while. Mm-hmm. And so
I think I saw the 2014 one is what I
okay, yeah. That was a good one. Well, they were held at the Lincoln Theater, and man, the place packed out, and we had several guests. You know, Sidewinder played, of course, but there was other friends that would that stopped by that would get up and do a song with us. John Custer and Rod Abernathy. Let's see who else. There was a few other guys from Sidewinder that sat in with us, and it was great. I think Daniel showed up for that, and it was just a wonderful reunion of that whole scene. You know, a lot of that revolved around the club back then called the Switch. That was down on Paula Street, long gone. But a lot of the fans of PKM frequented the Switch.
Oh yeah, it was amazing that during that time frame, and it seems there was if you go to a concert like that, you see a lot of QDR shirts too, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, QDR and Attic T-shirts.
Attic T-shirts, yeah. After PKM, you teamed up with several other session musicians and formed DAG, and released 2 albums internationally. In 1994, it was Righteous, and then in 1998, it was Apartment 635. The French appreciated the brand of funk that DAG had, that it was featured several times in French drum magazines. Tell us about your days with DAG.
Oh man, DAG was a wonderful thing that John Custer started. He is the producer extraordinaire and also songwriter extraordinaire. And so he said, look, he wanted me to come by and just play a couple of these James Brown beats that I would always play. And he, he's a local Raleigh guy. And so I would show up over there at this little 16-track on Western Boulevard called Jag Studios. Mm-hmm. It's now gone. But he had the key to the place and had the run of the place. So he said, look, play that James Brown song. And so I would do it. And he'd record me. And I'd come back in the next day, and he'd have a whole song written over that, a whole new song written over that. And that's really the way he operated. Wow. It was really spontaneous and wonderful. And so he started getting some of these other guys to come by, and the other guys had been in this cover band that played a lot of R&B stuff. They're called Mr. Potato Head. So, yeah, and so
I love it.
So we would go in there and one by one put on all these parts that John would think of and say, all right, plug in that wah-wah, do all this, get that fuzz box going. And the results were just amazing. And so, eventually Columbia Records heard it. And I think Pepper Keenan from Corrosion of Conformity is who played it for really? Columbia Records. And so they called and said, look, and by the way, we were not even a real band. We were just showing up at the studio to mess around with John. And they called and said, look, we want to see this. So throw it together, book a gig, and we're coming down to see you guys. And that's what happened. And we played it. We played at the brewery. We opened for, I think it was, might have been Dash Rip Rock. And we got a record deal on our first gig.
Awesome, very good. We're going to feature a song from that called Ruin You. The story behind Ruin You?
Ruin You was from the second album, and it was I think John had it in his head, but he wouldn't tell us. We didn't rehearse these things beforehand. We would just be out there. I'd be at the drums, and he in this case, I think I was just by myself. The other guys weren't even there. And so he directed me on what beat to play, and he would conduct me through the glass and tell me when to stop and when to start back up again. And a couple of days later, there'd be this fantastic song that he would have directed us in putting down all the parts. It was just an amazing experience.
Real
He's
good.
Quite a creative genius.
We're going to feature that song right now. This is from the 1998 album called Apartment 635. It is called Ruin You, and it is from Dag on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
She was a girl that would read your fortune. Like a bad musician, she played it all wrong. Yeah. Never had no rhyme or reason. Well, say your taste like a season. Yeah. Always been to places you ain't gone to yourself. She always seems at home when she is trapped in someone else. Forever into books like secret ways to read the mind. She comes into you, grabs your collar, loves you in the eye. I'm gonna make it so good. I'm gonna ruin ya. I'm gonna make it so nice, baby. Gonna ruin your attitude. Gonna make it so good. I'm gonna ruin ya. I'm gonna make it so right. I'm gonna ruin you. Oh, baby. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Yeah. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Something bad keeps her going. Running her trap while ass is showing. She had the keys and the secret password. Blowing her mouth while she's thinking backward. Well, I've heard of cases where they could shut her up, grabbing it and talking shit like she could mess you up. I'm gonna make it so good. I'm gonna ruin ya. Gonna make it so nice, baby. Gonna ruin your attitude. Gonna make it so good. I'm gonna ruin ya. Gonna make it so right. Gonna ruin your attitude, baby. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Yeah. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. It don't have to be like this, baby. It don't have to be like this, girl. It don't have to be like this, baby. It don't have to be like this, girl. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Yeah. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Yeah. Turn on the lights, turn on the lights, turn on the light now. Turn on the lights, 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 turn on the light now.
Well, the 1998 album 635, Ruin You, from Dag, featuring today's guest Kenny Soule on drums. Kenny, you've been touring with Nantucket, you've been touring with PKM, you've been touring with Dag, you've been with numerous musicians on stage. The next feature is called Tales from the Road, and these are those infamous road stories where things didn't go quite as planned, and I'm just imagining you've got a good one.
Well, I've got a few, but this one goes way back to the early days of Nantucket, when way before the record deal, and we were riding around North and South Carolina in a van, and so there was a promoter down there who was getting us a lot of work. So we were. It was in the wintertime, I remember, and we had the radio on, and we were heading to a venue that I think was in a town called North South Carolina.
No.
Yeah, North South Carolina. And so
that's just not right.
Yeah, we're riding along, and we have the local AM radio station on the van radio, and we hear an ad suddenly for us playing at a different place.
Oh, that's confusing
like
as hell.
Over in Greenville, South Carolina, or somewhere like that. And we're going, what? Wait a minute. No, we're going to this place tonight. And so we just went, what the hell? So we found out later that the promoter was booking us 3 different places on the same night and getting the deposits from the club owners, but only telling us about one of the gigs, and then canceling us to these other 2 places at the last minute, saying, "Oh, there's somebody sick; they can't make it."
Well, that's wrong. Hopefully, they got this guy.
That's the cutthroat world of live band gigs.
Jeez.
But so we found that out, and we went, "Oh man!" But it was quite a lesson.
Oh, darn, that's pretty wild. Now, you've had the privilege to play with a multitude of great musicians, including Sam Moore of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame duo Sam and Dave. Memories of those days. I know you got that one through Ivan Bodley. Tell us a little bit more of some of the other multitude of great musicians that you've played with.
Oh man, besides Sam Moore, boy, he's by the way, he's just still so amazing. But let's see now. Around New York, where I live, I play with Emily Duff, who is just
we're going to feature in a couple of minutes, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, great. No, she is a force of nature. She writes about 5 songs a week, and they're all
good Lord,
really good.
Good Lord.
So she keeps us on our toes, and this. Most of 22, I was touring with Sarah Borges, who's a wonderful...
I know Sarah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, man. She's a good roots rocker. She's from Boston. And on lead guitar is her producer, Eric Amble, who's also known as Roscoe. Mm-hmm. And he's quite the artist in his own right. But with him on board, the records are so good. The arrangements are already in place. We just show up and count it off. And she's she's got a really strong voice, and the band is killer. Awesome. So yeah, happy to be doing that.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to be working with individuals who are true professionals rather than trying to slag through something where you're not exactly sure which direction you're going to even go. But when you got an individual where it's just like, I'll just count it off. Let's go 1, 2, 3, and you just get in that groove.
Well, yeah, we don't even talk about it. We say, well, what's the set list? Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
I'm going to throw this in at the last minute here because I really and truly liked some of the music that I heard. My Three Sons. Tell me a little bit about My Three Sons.
Yeah. Oh, man. My Three Sons is a trio from Raleigh. It's an instrumental trio, except for 1 or 2 songs. But the leader and the songwriter is Pete Petty, who's a wonderful talent, fantastic guitarist in the vein of Jeff Beck and Robin Ford and people like that. And so they're all his songs, with the exception of 1 or 2 covers we do. We do Train Kept a Rollin' and Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, but it's a wonderful group and a trio. Pete is on guitar, and the bassist is Bobby Patterson, the lead singer and bassist from DAG. Mm-hmm. So we have quite a vibe going. It's about time we played again too. It's been since before the pandemic.
Well, you get some new music, you let me know, because I'd love to feature them in an upcoming episode too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Very good.
Yeah.
I have to ask this question: being a professional drummer that you have for years, who do you look up to as far as other drummers? I mean, I was a huge Rush fan growing up, and Neil Peart, always considered one of the top drummers of all time. Who do you consider some of your top drummers?
Oh man, if you've got to go back a little bit further to my formative years, where Ringo was a big influence, but Don Brewer always sticks out.
Oh yeah, Don Brewer, Grand Funk, yeah.
Don Brewer from Grand Funk was just a freight train, a monster freight train of a drummer. And let's see, then there's some slightly left of center drummers that I really enjoy, like the guy from NRBQ. His name was Tommy Ardolino. He's passed away now, but he's fantastic. And then a guy from New York who now is with Bob Dylan. His name's Charlie Drayton. Okay. And he was with, he's done a lot. He was with the Expensive Winos, and he's done, he was with Paul Simon. And then there's a guy named Mackie Jason who is from the New York hardcore band called the Cro-Mags. He's a beast.
Awesome. Awesome, very good. Yeah. I think they're all looking. I think Kenny Soule's one of my favorite drummers too.
Oh, gee, that guy.
All right,
you like him?
How about a link to some of your social medias and everything, Ken? What I'll do is I'll include all those in the show notes, so anyone who's driving right now doesn't have to try to write these things down. What are links to your social media and your website?
Yeah, it's KennySoule.com. Spelled as
Soule.
Yeah, KennySoule.com. And I am on Facebook, and that's and I am on Instagram.
Awesome, very good. I will have all those links down in the show notes too. And we mentioned Emily Duff a few minutes later. We're going to wrap up the show with one of her songs that you were involved with called "Born on the Ground." Tell us your thoughts behind that recording.
Yeah, this was done. This was also produced by the guy I mentioned, Eric Amble, over at his studio in Brooklyn. And this is one of the many songs that Emily cranks up. This is from the album we did about 3 years ago called Born on the Ground.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, who else is on it? Skip Ward is on bass. Charlie Giordano, who's with the E Street Band now, is on keyboards.
Awesome, very good. We're going to feature that song right now. "Born on the Ground" from Emily Duff, featuring my guy right here, Kenny Soule on drums. Ken, it's been an absolute thrill to have you on the show and reminisce some old days of PKM, and it was great. Thanks again for giving us such great music through the years, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you much, Rick. Thanks for remembering PKM, and appreciate all you do.
Wake me up when the killing stops. Don't want to know about the girly parts. I've seen the bottom. I was born on the ground. Shake me up into the mail. Put on my favorite red party dress and dance with the devil. 5-inch heels. Keeping hungry for that angry feeds my seed, my need to survive. It's just as simple. I work that angle when you're born on the ground. Inside. Fill me up when I'm running low, and watch me spin down and let me go. 'Cause I am a storm, a raging tornado. Hold on tight, pray for rain to wash away all the sin and pain. At the end of the day, we're all going down, and keeping hungry for that angry feeds my seed, my need to survive. It's just that simple. I work that angle when you're born on the ground. Dead inside. So wake me up when the killing stops. I check my sleep for the Queen of Hearts. As I chose my fate, I jumped into the fire. Keeping hungry for that angry feeds my seed, my need to survive. Just as simple. I work that getting sad.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.